It is, well, I can't believe it's Monday already. That weekend has flown. But welcome everyone. It's 8:30 here in the UK on a Monday morning, as we always are for Bailey and French Live. I've got a really exciting guest. Again, I keep saying this because we keep getting some amazing people on. So Beth, I'll let you introduce yourself in a minute. But how was your weekend? How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Feeling pretty refreshed because my children weren't at home last night, so I've had a really good night's sleep, which is rare. But just really nice weekend, seeing family, enjoying the sunshine, and really ready for spring to like properly kick in now with a bit of heat. But no, it's been really nice, thank you. And again, can't believe it's Monday already, but
I can't believe it.
8:30 in the morning, let's go.
Well, this is it, right? And this is why we do it. So, and thank you for everyone who's kind of shared their messages and their thoughts, kind of going, hey, we'd really love you to talk about this topic. We'd really like to get, someone who can talk around X, Y, Z. And there's been loads of comments around different topics. So please keep sending those in. It's been awesome to read them and to hear what you want and what you'd appreciate us kind of talking about. So thank you. And it's here for everyone and I know there's a few of you who are just listening to the audio of this and not watching our wonderful faces this morning, but it is beautiful here in Brighton this morning. So let's go. Let's crack on with a Monday. Let's get into it. Beth, we're going to be talking about emotion today, which is quite a broad topic. And emotion at work, but actually work has blended into work and life. And, all of that has brought up a load of things for people around how to be vulnerable, how to be authentic. And we touched a little bit on that last week or the week before. There's loads of things that could come out of this. So let's see where this conversation goes. But thank you for joining. Great to have you with us.
You're welcome. I think that's the challenge, isn't it? Is like keeping stuff to 30 minutes because there's so much we could talk about. And then making sure that people leave with something kind of quite tangible that they can then take away and like apply either on themselves or with their teams. That's what I'm kind of hoping to give everyone this morning, but we'll see. We'll try and keep each other honest and not waffle too much.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you on. It's great to have you on because of your experience, right? So you work at exec level, you work at leadership level, you work on all things emotional intelligence and bringing all of the kind of the really tangible, practical things into people's everyday lives. And I think that's really, really important when we're talking about well-being and emotion, and emotion in terms of connecting people and getting people to work more productively and building a stronger business, actually.
And I think, from my point of view, so I'm an executive leadership coach. My background is mainly in working with sales teams, sales organizations, and bringing in coaching cultures and working with leaders who are best salesperson, manager, and then that's quite a step up to suddenly be the super duper salesperson, and now you're expected to coach, lead, mentor, be there for your team. It's quite a challenge to step up to that. And then the other thing that I'm using my coaching for is something called fresh air thinking. So this was born out of basically the lockdowns, of finding a way of like being able to kind of connect with your team in a COVID safe way. So bringing coaching outside. Mm-hmm. And now that everyone's working from home, it's, as you say, so easy to then kind of like blend your work life, your home life together. So how do you separate that out from an emotional point of view? It's quite tricky. And then how, if you're a manager, do you support people in a way that's going to help them kind of like understand their emotions, humanize it, make it okay to have them, because we're all living through really challenging times. So there is more emotion around than there's been. So this kind of like old school way of saying there's no space for emotion at work and being professional is to not have emotion. It's not real. And if you're looking for people to bring their authentic selves to work, you can't do that without expecting to have some emotions, good and bad. And I think that this is, that in itself is a phrase that is almost wrong, isn't it? You can't. Yeah. The idea that there are good and bad emotions, there are just emotions. You can't control them. You can control how you respond. You can control how you react in the moment. So you're responding, not reacting, when you're feeling a strong emotion. But this idea that good vibes only is something I hate that phrase, because it's just not real. And I don't know what your experiences are, and how you guys at Bailey and French handle emotion, because I know that you're all about being human centric.
Yeah.
Is it something you guys talk about often?
Yeah, it's a really good point, actually, and you're right. Emotion is emotion. These are signals to tell you something, right? They're a communication mechanism for your body. So there isn't good or bad. They're just you could potentially put them in positive and negative, but actually sometimes anger is really positive because it tells you something quite important around your boundaries or your values, which can be quite powerful for you to take note of. So I like that. I like the balance, and the balance is, of course, we're human. We have emotion. It's probably just how do we tap into the fact that we have emotions to build a stronger business that's more sustainable, more productive? How do we use emotion to influence and connect and collaborate more effectively together? And especially now that we're blurring those boundaries, as you say, the role of a manager or a leader or anyone, actually just a team member, has completely changed. And I was thinking, what emotions are people going into this week with? Even those questions should be front of mind for managers right now, shouldn't they?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think if you were to have a check-in with your team and just understand, what emotions are, then that's quite interesting, isn't it? What an insight into your team and how you can best be there for them to understand what's going on. And I think that this is the thing, from my experience in my earlier kind of career, when I was, in my 20s in high pressure sales, if I was to show emotion, it just wasn't handled very well. And then it would just, I would just be labelled as emotional. There was never any conversation around, well, what is the emotion you're feeling and where is it coming from? And, I think a lot of the time for women, emotion could show up with, your eyes welling up and say, oh, she's upset. Whereas actually, it's an involuntary reaction in my body of, usually linked to being really frustrated in a situation. And actually men and women feel the same emotions, but it shows up differently. So with men, it will quite often be like an outburst of anger. You don't normally see women react that way, but it's interesting how then that's also kind of, is handled differently. If a man was to start getting upset at work, you would handle it so much differently, wouldn't you, to see women do it? And I think it's kind of like just stepping out of that preconceptions and trying to kind of like look at it as a piece of data rather than it being you're labeling someone and dismissing them as a professional because they've displayed some form of uncomfortableness, because that's ultimately what it is data, as you say, leading back to values and stuff. And that's what I think, from a coaching perspective, that's quite a powerful thing, because coaching is all about data, picking up facial expressions or how people are saying things, if they're pausing, if there's a big sigh before they make a statement, and separating out those types of things as a manager and a leader is really insightful. If you sort of kind of be able to help that person as well, reflect back and say, well, you're saying you're really excited about the week, but before you said it, you let out a massive sigh. And I can tell that something's not quite tallying up for me there. Let's talk about that. And I think I guess if you are in a leadership position right now and you're thinking like going into the week, how can I serve my people? I guess there's two things really. One, how are you demonstrating your emotional kind of agility, to use that word, that phrase from Susan David, who, if you haven't seen her TED Talk, I would highly recommend it. It's so interesting, so insightful, because it talks about how you can't be a leader, you can't be bringing your best self if you are not understanding your own emotions. And I think that if you are able to kind of like talk openly about the emotions you're feeling and model that to your team, that's a huge thing that not many people are doing, in my experience, but can have huge results, you know, because it really encourages that culture of being able to make mistakes, because you're just experimenting, you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. There are going to be emotions that come up when you're challenging yourself like that. You know, like imposter syndrome, that's commonly a thing, isn't it, where it's like, well, should it even be a problem? Should it be an issue? Sign that you're pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. But that's not to say that that's not going to bring up uncomfortable emotions. But if you are able to just recognize what they are and almost just acknowledge, like, oh, okay, this, what does this mean? What's this telling me? That's really powerful, rather than beating yourself up for feeling something. That's not helpful.
That's quite interesting, actually. I've never really considered that myself around imposter syndrome, and that's a message that we get an awful lot to talk about it. And kind of a lot of people seeing it as a negative emotion, but what we're saying here is there isn't a negative emotion. There is emotion, and an imposter syndrome is a sign that you're pushing yourself beyond boundary. Now, how you perceive that and how you deal with that and how you can potentially even utilize that to drive you and know that you're pointing in the right direction, you're doing some great work, and to keep going, could be quite a powerful, I guess, shift of perception of how you're feeling.
Yes.
Which could be quite powerful.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of having that compassion with yourself to say it's okay that I'm feeling, you know, I guess a bit worried or uneasy in this feeling, because I, you know, that's my body trying to keep me safe, because I'm entering into a situation that I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know the outcome. And some people are much more naturally kind of, you know, I guess want that kind of unknown. They're kind of, you know, more of an explorer by nature, like the experimentation. But I think it's definitely something you can learn. It's definitely something you can start to enjoy, that feeling of uncomfortableness, you know, feeling the fear and doing it anyway. But you need that culture around you of experimentation is okay, making mistakes is okay, because it shows that you're trying something new. If you're not making any mistakes, if you've got someone in your team and they never make any mistakes, are they just playing it safe all the time? You don't get that lucky time. You could argue there's an element of like they're holding back because they're staying well in their comfort zone. Excuse me. So I think that you know, coming back to what you can be doing if you're a leader or a manager, to kind of have these conversations about emotion and ease into it without putting, you know, 2 feet into something and you know, having a really difficult conversation, is being able to name emotion. So for me, like twofold benefit. So by naming it, you're helping to distance yourself from the emotion. So it's that kind of difference of I am feeling anger rather than I am angry. The emotion isn't you. So if you're able to sit down with, you know, on your own or with your team and just try and name the emotions that you're feeling, if you're in a situation where you can tell that you're kind of, you know, that kind of like fog, uncomfortable feeling, you know, and I am focusing on the negative emotions here, I appreciate, is coming, you can name it. It is really helpful, because it can sort of distance yourself from it, but also start to think, okay, what is this trying to tell me? And the other thing, I've got a diagram that I can share with everyone afterwards that then links these kind of different emotions to like your energy levels. So as a manager, if you're sitting down with someone in your team and you're kind of saying, well, I've noticed your energy levels are low, we look at this mood meter and look at the emotions that are low energy side. Which one of these is resonating with you? That could be like so powerful conversation, because it makes it human, and you're having, you're getting to that kind of like deeper level of conversation with people in your team and getting to know them, and you're kind of modeling how to help them move through it.
I like that. Just as a simple way to kind of have a good conversation, a more human conversation with someone in your team, and kind of going, we're all human, we all have emotions, we all have energy levels. Let's have a look at what's happening. Let's just be curious, and by putting something quite objective on the table in front of you to look at, rather than you staring at each other and asking really difficult questions. Let's look at this thing on the table. It can be quite a powerful, as you say, detachment of the emotion, and quite freeing, actually.
And I think that's the word there for me, from what you said, is the curiosity. If you as opposed to going in with like, well, I noticed you got really emotional on that call. Let's talk about it. It's like, well, I just want to get curious about how that meeting went, or how you feel that meeting went. Because I sense that you're a bit, uncomfortable. And it could be that there's any reason why, but it's just coming from a place of curiosity. It takes out that kind of like accusation, the judgment. And I think, I guess something we should have brought in maybe at the start of this conversation is like, why is this important? Why is it important to be talking about emotion? And for me, it's, if you are on the brink of burnout, by having this kind of, the blurred lines between work and home life, it's really easy to kind of start to become overwhelmed and that burnout. And the easiest way, one of the best ways to kind of prevent you going down that full path of burnout, or if you're starting to see warning signs in your team, one of the best ways of preventing it is to start to kind of like go to those uncomfortable places and name those uncomfortable emotions, start to understand, okay, let's take a sense check here of what's going on, and separating out the kind of like the language, again going back to coaching, when you kind of trying to pick out the subtleties and what people are telling you. When people are saying, well I have to do this, as opposed to I want to do this. I should be doing this, that. I remember having a job that I absolutely hated, huge commute into London, so it's costing me loads of money to get to work. Then when I got there, it was all wrong. And when people were talking to me about it, I was saying, I have to stay for at least a year, because I was made redundant in my previous job, and so it's going to look really bad on my CV, and and I should just get on with it. And it's like, it's crazy what I was putting myself through. I was not bringing my best self to work. I was never going to be able to really thrive in that role. And I think that if you've got a member of staff and you're noticing that they're kind of using that kind of language of, I have to do this, okay, well, let's unpack that a bit. How can we find a way of you wanting to do it? You're going to enjoy it. Like, what could be the benefits of doing it? Because otherwise they could be like starting to go down a kind of tunnel where they're going to become emotionally burnt out.
And I think there's a really interesting point there around, and we talk a lot about curiosity, and normally it's around people's values and inclusivity and their experiences and what it means to them for all sorts of things, to just ask questions and be curious. But this is quite a practical thing for maybe people to take away for this week, right? If you just be curious and just sit back in your board meeting, at your senior leadership meeting, your all hands meeting that you're getting everyone together for. It's new financial year for a lot of people. Maybe there's a particular strategy meeting, or there's a lot of meetings that are going to be happening for you this week. Let's use them as an opportunity to really build kind of that emotional mood meter, or that emotional map of the people around you. Who's feeling what right now? And maybe you'll spot some things that you won't have realized before. And you can maybe go and have a conversation with that person afterwards, if it's appropriate, of course. But going, hey, I noticed in that meeting you said this, but your face said this. What's going on? Tell me more. What's going on here? And see what comes from it. Because I think what you're saying there about why is this important for people? It's catching burnout before it happens. It's catching the fact that people might want to be leaving because they feel like they should be doing stuff, or they feel like people are not listening to them, or people aren't really getting to know them on a deeper, more human level, and they don't feel able to express those emotions. And actually, once they express those emotions, it could be a completely different story. Maybe there's a subtle mindset shift around imposter syndrome, for example, that we just touched on, that could really open the door and just completely change people's weeks. This week going into, here in the UK, it's into Easter, which could be quite a powerful, important thing to drive your business forward for the next year. It's quite important that people are having this conversation right now.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there's really subtle things that you can do, as opposed to thinking, oh, this is just another thing that I'm good at as a leader. I've got to suddenly become like really emotionally agile. I've got to suddenly be, actually there's really simple steps you can take to help you on like your own self-awareness kind of journey. In terms of just taking stock. If you are in a meeting or after a meeting, you think, I'm a bit uncomfortable about how that went. It didn't, the outcome of the meeting could have been really positive, but there's something that's niggling you about it. Just trying to understand what that feeling is, and where's it coming from, and do you need to have some kind of follow-up conversation to kind of prevent it happening again? Because I think from my experiences, the biggest thing for me when I was getting frustrated was showing emotion was a frustration, which is then kind of self-fulfilling, because then you're frustrated that you're having these involuntary kind of like moments of showing emotion, but it was coming from a very frustrated place. And then because nobody ever kind of sat with me and talked to me about it, you felt even more frustrated, because you're like, well, they're just missing me now. They're not even listening to what I have to say. And the turning point was having someone, in a coaching scenario, from my perspective, was having someone actually sit down and kind of challenge you as well. Be like, okay, where are you coming from, and what can you do to take control of this? You can't control everyone else. There's only so much you have control over personally, but what can you take control of to kind of channel that frustration into a positive maturity? That was the biggest transformation for me. So I think it's trying to kind of like really name those emotions is what I talked about, and normalizing it for your team to say, you know what, I'm after that meeting, I'm actually feeling this, and what I'm going to do about that is not make any decisions today, because I feel like my kind of like inner critic, or my critical head, is in control of me, not my nice, calm, sage coach head is on. I think that's the kind of thing for me. When you're feeling an emotion, the biggest thing I'm trying to learn, and especially with parenting young children, is to kind of just say, it's okay, it's normal to feel frustrated when something like this happens, or it's okay to feel disappointed. And with my kids, it's then separating out the behaviour from the emotion. It's okay, normal to feel angry and frustrated that you can't have more chocolate, or you can't have pudding first, but it's not okay to hit me. The behaviour is not okay. The emotion is normal. And separating those things out. And I think that's the other thing, if you do see negative emotions leading to behaviour, not kind of normalising that it's okay. Oh, well, they were really this. They were really, but the behaviour is still not okay. So, maybe when you're speaking to that person, say when you're feeling like that, take a walk, go outside, fresh perspective before you come in and make big decisions, or send that email. Quite often you write the email, don't you, and then don't send it.
And that's the worst thing that you can possibly ever do. There's one thing you change this week, don't do that. There's something, you're right. There's something for me about, so as I was listening, I was kind of putting so a lot of people watching this lead their own business or lead a large function within a business. I guess one of the things that would scare me, that as one of those people leading a large business, if everyone starts to suddenly start talking about their emotions and how they feel and how they're not going to make decisions today because they don't feel like it, or they feel unwell, or they feel like they can't be productive today, so they're going to, take it easy. How are people balancing those? Because that's not what we're saying here. I know that's not what you're saying. There's something around the commitment and ownership of how your emotions kind of come together and what you do about it, and how you communicate it. I think there's something there. I don't know.
I think it comes back to, if you're looking to get people to be at their best, then you can't do that and avoid, being emotionally kind of agile, but also emotionally aware, because you can't, sometimes you can't move through something, or you'll dwell on it, or it will linger, or you might even, arguably worse, depending on what the emotion is, suppress it completely, and it will come back, but it will come back bigger and scarier than if you just kind of like dealt with it in the moment. So I think from my point of view, I'm not you're right. I don't suddenly think that everyone should be sitting around talking about emotions. I think it's more that, trying to find ways of not being afraid to have those conversations when you see something or when you're feeling it. And this won't be all the time, this is just something to kind of like have in the back of your mind, rather than creating this culture of like, oh, this is uncomfortable, let's just move on and hope that we don't see that again. Because the chances are you will, but it'll come out in a, worst case, in a burnout scenario. And I think that it's just kind of like just being able to acknowledge it and learn your cues will actually help you make some decisions quicker, because you'll be like, right, I'm not in the right frame of mind to make this decision. I'm sitting here and I can just feel I'm uncomfortable. I don't, recognizing that, okay, I'm not in the right headspace to make this decision. I need to go for a walk, or I need to go and speak to a colleague, or I need to, do whatever you do to help you make decisions. It might be that you go and look at a risk. You need to kind of like manage the decision itself as a right. Let's just get into the facts versus feelings. What are the facts in this situation? What are the feelings? And separate them out. And this all comes from kind of getting to know yourself on a deeper level, because sometimes there are feelings being stated as fact, and again, coach, that's something that you try and like pick out, challenge people, because it's really quickly like shifting those opinions into becoming like the stories you're telling yourself.
And the stories that you tell yourself are really, really important pieces of your identity, actually, as you continue and as you grow. There's something that I've tried to learn and tried to apply so many times, and I still get it wrong all the time. I do this, but this is a classic one, I think, or maybe it's just me, I don't know, where you kind of go, oh, hey, that you look really upset, let's have a chat. And the person goes, I'm not upset. Oh, you seem a bit angry. Well, I am now. Because you're mislabeling, and you're telling someone a story about themselves that isn't true. And it kind of creates this very negative. So I guess there's a warning going into those conversations, isn't it? To observe behavior, non-judgmental way. To, I guess, highlight that there might be something, but you don't know and you're curious. And that there's space, if they want to right now or in the future, talk about it, and giving that person the control over how they feel and what label they want to put on that emotion.
And just say, and it can be just as simple as like, oh, I noticed that you seemed a bit frustrated how that meeting went. Do you want to talk about it? And that's exactly it. Curiosity, not judgment. And just being careful with that language of, well, you looked emotional, or you were this. But yeah, well, I'll share the mood meter with you so people can find it if they want.
Well, I guess so I'm really conscious that is already 30 minutes. And we did say, hey, this is a huge topic. There's no way we're going to cover everything. So we did warn you, people listening, we did warn you. I guess there's a thing. So takeaways for me, I was hearing everything. I don't know what your takeaways are of this, but for me, I was going, okay, I'm going to take note of what I am feeling in meetings and in any interaction this week. I'm just going to note them down. I'm just going to be curious, and at the end of the week, I'm just going to write what I've noticed about what meetings, what people, what emotions. Not good or bad emotions, just what emotions, and being careful to really label them quite specifically. So if you just go, oh, I'm sad or I'm angry, or that's quite basic. Let's try and explore other emotions that you might be feeling. And then kind of going, okay, how am I going to take ownership of this emotion and do something? What do I want to do with it? What is it telling me? Do I just leave it? Do I park it? Do I go and have a conversation with someone? Do I go and check with someone who is also in the meeting? Hey, I noticed I was feeling a little bit frustrated in that meeting, and I'm not really sure why. What do you think? You were in that meeting. Was there anything that I should have been annoyed about? And just kind of checking with others. So those for me were some of the things that I'm going to take away those actions for this week. If there's people listening and watching, what are your kind of top tips and takeaways?
I think for me, this is something I'm constantly working on in terms of trying to get to know myself better and kind of like going into those nuances of what different are. It's not just happy and sad. It's not just, angry. There's all sorts, there's hopeful, there's pleasant, there's, there is worried, there's apathetic. Something as well that I've noticed from doing these fresh air thinking workshops is actually quite a lot of people are feeling lonely. And if you're working from home, it's quite difficult sometimes to kind of like, if you've changed job in that time, you've got to build relationships from scratch. You could be working now for companies anywhere, which is great and a positive, but how do you kind of combat that loneliness and checking in with people and making sure they're okay? Coming back to that human element. But I think for me, it's the other thing that I am kind of trying to get better at is noticing if I'm in a low energy mood, then going, oh, okay, so what are the emotions that are causing that? And what can I do? What are the steps? But, quite a lot of time, it's going for a walk solves it for me. Going out in nature, getting outside, fresh perspective, energy back.
Getting outside, getting connected with people, being human, and allowing yourself and allowing others around you to showcase those emotions, and just communicate how it is. How are people feeling today? How is that going to impact performance? And how can we move into the week and feel a little bit more hopeful and bring a little bit more joy into our lives? Thank you for joining. I really enjoyed the conversation. And as you said, it's a great way to start the week. And I hope everyone listening and watching, you feel the same. Hopefully you're going into the week going, yes, let's do it. Let's bring the energy. So thank you. Appreciate it. People can find you on LinkedIn, can't they?
Yes. Yeah. Mostly in under Beth Grayston. I am, Fresh Air Thinking is also on LinkedIn now, which I've now set up. But please feel free to connect. It'd be great to hear from you. And if you've got any questions, let me know. And then I'll share this diagram from the present psychologist, because it is a really useful way of like being able to start those conversations without putting your feet in it and making the situation worse.
Which is always the biggest blocker that people
this
is just having the conversation, right? Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for your thoughts today.
No worries at all. And thank you.
Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye.